Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. I've got Rob Hagen here from Brockley stores, and there are many other things as well. So do you just quickly for everybody, Brockley stores is one of them. What other things have you got underneath your...
Everything we do is about trying to nourish people with amazing food. So we run a number of farm shops, bakeries and catering businesses, and they operate under Brockley stores, the public markets, East Bristol Bakery, and then we run Bristol Airport staff canteen.
Wow, quite diverse, hey? So how did Bristol Airport come about?
Oh, it's an interesting one. So I'd opened up Brockley stores in 2016, which is a farm shop on the side of the road, just down the road from Bristol Airport.
It's lovely, been there.
Yeah, thanks. And I think for a long time, I just felt like one of the opportunities would be to work with such a big player in the local economy.
Yeah.
And I guess it happened around the time that the Ukraine-Russia war kicked off. Flour prices had really gone through the roof. Electric prices had gone through the roof, and running a food business was becoming pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So I had our local MP down for 4 or 5 hours to partly have a good moan at, but mainly because I felt like I don't have the ability to moan at anybody else or feel sorry for myself if I don't try and do something about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, he came down, we spent some time together. At the end of it, he turns around and goes, "Oh, look, Rob, I completely understand your concerns, but in all honesty, I'm not in the cabinet, probably not going to be able to do anything for you, or at least not directly."
Yeah.
But he said, "Is there anything that I can do that might help you now?" And I said to him, "How about an introduction to some of the big local businesses?" And I guess, to cut a long story short, that led to meeting up with the Bristol Airport board.
Wow.
They were trying to bring their staff back into the office after COVID. And they said, "Would you be interested in running a coffee shop?" It's kind of like a high-end coffee shop, really. Coffee shop for us that brings together incredible local food that's going to mean people want to come back into the office. So that's how that happened. I guess that whole, if you don't ask a question, you don't get anything from.
But it's, what I like about that is you've gone to try and find a solution to a problem, and then ended up into another conversation that has opened yet another door. Yeah. It's just being open to say, well, and the guy to someone say, "Hey, I can help you. Is there any way I can help you?" And you go, "Yeah, this is my ask." And I think at that point, most people will go, "Oh, I'll get back to you," or "I'll send you an email." But it's good that you knew how to respond. Yeah. So.
And I think even when we went to originally speak to the airport, it was, I guess I had this idea of what I wanted to pitch, which was, we'd like to sell you some office catering, because we'd started to work at Bristol University, started to work with some other big corporates around Bristol. And I was like, well, we just want to sell platters to help your meetings come to life, and the food's going to be incredible. It's going to help you work better as a team. And the answer I got back was, "Oh, we'll happily buy that off you, but we don't do a lot of that. How about something different?" And I think my original answer to it was, "Don't think that's the one for us." But definitely wouldn't look back on it, because it's something where you can just see how that office building comes to life as soon as you put food, coffee, and a person at the heart of it. Yeah.
So has food always been your passion growing up? I mean, most people, when we talk about purpose, it's like one of the questions we ask is, what was the things that you used to do as a kid where you actually forgot to eat because you're so passionate about stuff? So was it you, when you were growing up, that you kind of had a lean in towards cooking, catering, that sort of stuff? Were you experimenting, or is it just something you just fell into?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think food's always been a big part of my life. Yeah. But growing up, it was never something that I thought needed to be at the center of a working environment. I think if you talk to me about food and about growing up, what I remember is Christmases, parties, people over for dinner, family breakfasts. It's kind of that loving relationship that human beings can have with food, and how it can put smiles on people's faces. I think I always knew that I wanted to do something physical, something, I could never face the idea of going into something like finance or just something which didn't involve real stuff. I guess it was the very dawn of the internet, so that didn't really exist. But for me, it was definitely, I want to do something with people and something with things.
Yeah.
I think actually growing up, I guess what I've come back to in this like second part of my career is that entrepreneurial thing of just wanting to make things better and wanting to come up with ideas and not really having to answer to anybody else apart from your customers. So growing up, I was making websites for people. I was setting up little businesses, trying to buy and sell stuff just to make some money. Whether it was buying and selling mobile phones, whether it was coming up with an idea to help someone put their first ever website up. Now, if you look at these websites now, they would be atrocious. But I sort of then went off, I guess, maybe slightly just stuck in this idea of want to get a good job. In inverted commas. Want to earn a good living, get a good wage, have a nice house. But I always had this thing about following my heart. So sort of through school, that ended up meaning that I studied classics at university. So it was, ancient Greek, Latin, philosophy, just loved it and I loved the context and the history and just being able to learn more about literature. But by the end of university, I'd got to a point where actually what I didn't like was the academia of it. Like if you were going to put me in a room with a book, I would read it. If you were going to put me in the room with a book and then tell me to write an essay about it, I just couldn't think of anything I'd be wanting to do less.
Okay.
So I sort of ended up DJing for the university, did a little bit abroad.
Did you have a name, Rob?
Oh, DJ Strobe. Yeah, and it was in the height of the UK garage season. You can tell that I've got that image going down still. But it was, I guess, that thing about following your heart. But I think I got to the end of uni, and I think I definitely knew that I wanted to get into the world of work. And I don't know, through a few things of trying out different jobs, ended up working in management consultancy. But that kind of sounds like doesn't go along with what I said at the start around work with people and physical things, but actually it was very people focused. So I was working out in Asia, across Africa, in the Middle East, setting up repair factories in that peak of that first mobile phone boom when Nokia was still a household name. If you remember them.
I do,
And worked on these big change programs, trying to look at how we can save money and give customers a better experience. But it was like very hands-on, working, like I say, setting up factories, repair shops, repair lines.
Did you have a favorite Nokia phone?
Oh, I don't know. I've had many favourite Nokia phones, so I was quite into them at the time.
Because I think my brother had that. The one was because my brother used to test for Orange, so he had to get all the Nokia phones come in. So he's walking around with like a different phone every week. So there's that banana type phone that slid out. That was a Nokia one.
It was. I think my two favourites. There was like a little computery one, 9100 communicator.
Okay.
Which felt like it was well ahead of its time. And then there was a metal cased 8900, which felt like it was bling before its time. But I think that was at the time when definitely Nokia were a bit skeptical about whether cameras should be a thing on a phone.
And I think that it's an interesting thing because like you're traveling the world and you're going all around the world, and then obviously you're seeing people interact with this particular product, and that's a great test story of not evolving. That they made they were streets ahead, and then they almost rested and almost stopped taking risks, and ultimately it's what cost them. And I think Microsoft bought them in the end, if I remember rightly, and then Microsoft had a couple of Microsoft/Nokias, and then they became just Microsoft, and eventually they sold out. But for me, it was like it's interesting that you're going around the world and you're collecting all this information and ideas. Does any of that sort of journeys and any influence you now, do you think, in terms of your business?
I think for me a lot of it is just like putting yourself out there, meeting people, experiencing life with other people instead of pretending that you understand what people are like.
Yeah.
So I remember working out in Nigeria, and quite a lot of the people that I was meeting out there were some of the Nigerian businessmen who had set up a lot of the mobile phone networks out there, but there was also a lot of Chinese, Malaysian, Singapore expats that were, very technically skilled working out there. I remember meeting up with a couple of the team for the first time and saying, "Oh, right, guys, should we go out for dinner?" I think that food at the heart of it, getting to know each other. And they're like, yeah, Rob, let's go. There's this great Singapore restaurant in this hotel in the middle of Victoria Island. And I'm like, I know what you mean, but how about we go and eat some Nigerian food?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they turned around and go, we've never had Nigerian food. I was like, guys, you've been out here for 6 months. What have you been playing at? Yeah. Like, for me, the first thing would be to just go down, find some street food, taste some stuff. Anyway, one of the guys that was driving the taxi that I was using was called Sunday. And so I go to this guy, call over to him. Sunday's like, Sunday, we want to go out for food later, but these guys don't know any local places. Do you fancy coming with us and taking us somewhere nice? And the guy's probably a bit uncomfortable with it because they did quite like this restaurant that they proposed. But went down, we had some street food, ended up in this little Nigerian nightclub. I guess just this whole mix of people getting to know each other, but with that sharing of food. But for me, it's that's probably not so much about the food, but about connecting with other people, listening to them, understanding their life, their story. And
again, what I think what's becoming clear is that food is at the heart of those relationships and those experiences and bringing people together. So you're in management consultancy.
Yep.
And then obviously you're doing that. I guess you're doing quite well. So when did the sort of like the thought process of begin to, transition to what you're doing now? I mean, was it a longing for home and you wanted to do something back in the UK? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. It definitely felt that after 4 or 5 years of living out of a suitcase, not really having a fixed address, or definitely not one that felt like a fixed address, it was time to come home. I was missing friends, missing family. So I decided that I was going to come back, and I think this is when the first bit of food came into my life, from a working perspective, but trying to sort of build on the skills I had and what can I put them into something else. So I came back and applied to work for Tesco as one of their program managers in their internal consultancy division.
Right.
And for me, it ticked the boxes of big company that's got lots of opportunity. It has skills that they're looking for, skills that I've got, some really exciting industry as a food industry, obviously a very different scale to what I'm doing now, but just that idea of people have got so much choice nowadays about where they shop and trying to make it as efficient as and effective as possible.
Yeah.
Just sounded like it was what I needed, and I guess went back to those like real early thoughts in my life about wanting to work with physical things. Like, you can't get much more basic than selling people food.
No.
In terms of like the evolution of jobs, that goes from farming to then selling that food. So ended up working at Tesco, and I think what started as, we'll see what happens for a year or two, ended up being about 5 years. And I guess moving from consultancy type roles to much more operational management roles. So ended up running Tesco's UK and Irish space range and merchandising team. So the people that decide where should you put stuff in a shop.
Okay.
So we had a team of probably about 150 in the UK, 100 odd out in Bangalore in India. And it was a big job, big responsibility. But Tesco ended up going through some pretty tough times. Mm-hmm. The discounters came along, Lidl, Aldi, and market share started to get eroded. Tesco went through a restructure. Actually, my job was ultimately safe through the restructure, But through it, one of my bosses, one of the guys who really inspired me through life actually, and helped me to sort of see my future, Scott. We were sat down in the canteen for breakfast. He was one of those people who he knew he was going to move on to something different, and he was going to stay for a few months just to help see some of us through our sort of transition. And obviously lots of people leaving the business at this point in time. Yeah. And he said, "So Rob, are you going to stick around then?" And in my head, I was like, "Well, of course I am. I've got a job. Why would I be leaving?"
Yeah.
And, that was probably the sort of most important greasy sausage that I've ever eaten in my life. Because for the rest of that day, I couldn't think about anything else apart from why wouldn't I now use this as a chance to move on?
Wow.
There was an opportunity for not a massive, but a little bit of a redundancy payout on a voluntary redundancy. And I think that was all I needed to go back to those roots of wanting to have my own business. I definitely spent the whole first sort of 8 years of my working life trying to come up with the innovative idea that was going to be my light bulb moment, that was going to be my business. And I guess it was over some baked beans and sausages that I had my actual light bulb moment, which was, I don't need to create something new. I just need to do something amazingly that people need.
Yeah, that's it. 100%.
And food has been a passion. So obviously Tesco doesn't sound like it's the most passionate place to be around food. And I guess I was a bit disillusioned with how the whole farming industry was working in this country. But in my spare time, I was off out to farm shops, buying nice food so that we could make delicious dinners.
Yeah.
I was out to sort of farm agroecology places in the countryside to learn about farming and to learn about the food industry. And I just had a 4 or 5 year grounding with one of the best retailers in the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a no-brainer. What I need to do is go and either start a farm shop or buy a business that already exists, because I love customers, I love food, I know how retail works, and it's something that I think I can do.
Well, it's an interesting one, because I think that a lot of people, that they if they do jump into business, they don't allow themselves to train off the best, if you like. And like what you've done is you've gone and worked for one of the biggest companies out there in a sense, and learn. How does this look like at scale? And then obviously you've left with that education and knowledge now. We go, well, if I am going to do it, these are the things I would do, and these are the things I wouldn't. But you've got a ground in there that most people will pay a fortune at university to even start the journey. So I think it's great. It's
you're right. But I think the thing that's interesting is when I was at Tesco, I'd always was like, quite often people who wanted to get promoted through the ranks at Tesco would want to tick off and genuinely get the experience of like an operational role, so running a shop as a store manager, or something else. I remember chatting to our CTO and saying, right, as part of my career journey, I'd really like to go and run a big Tesco. And I remember him turning around to me and going, look, Rob, I get what you mean. It's really important that you get some operational experience. But I know you, and you are going to get so bored when you've got to tell the trolley person to put the trolleys back for the 57th time on a Monday morning, having already asked the previous 52 weeks of the year.
Wow.
And so it's interesting. So I think although I'd had definitely a real good understanding of customers, and I think that is one of the most important things, is to just understand customers, understand your place in the marketplace. So I think weirdly, when people ask me, for example, who's your competition at the moment, I think what they expect is for me to say, oh, it's that other farm shop down the road, or it's that shop that sells milk from a milk stand. Like for me, we are all part of the same ecosystem. We're doing the same thing, which is creating a choice from what everybody else has, because everybody has got the choice to shop in at least 6 supermarkets, whether that is physically, whether it is on your telephone, whether it's on your laptop, on your iPad. So for me, our biggest competition which makes it quite easy, but also very difficult, are the biggest shops in the world. Because what we need to do is persuade people probably not to change their entire food spend, because I'm not sitting here suggesting that what we sell is fully affordable for everybody to eat 3 meals a day off 7 days a week, but just to give people that chance to either taste something that is slightly different or specialist or super fresh, which actually can also mean super cheap. For me, it's about providing that choice, but then also providing that environment, which is not just about beep, 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 and you're a number, that you're part of our community. And I think one of the biggest joys of my life is going into any of our shops and just seeing the conversation that's going on between the team and the customers that come in, the customers and another customer.
Yeah, and I think, like I've seen that shift. I think there is definitely a much deeper desire to, yes, you've got your, if you like, your main shop, but I think there is that element of wanting to buy sourdough, for example, and the sourdough in the supermarket's not quite cutting it, so I want to go and get it somewhere else or whatever. We've got, where we live in Brockley, we've got the Gloucester Farm Shop services. So on a Sunday after the football, we get there around about now, we're going to get loads of sourdough for 50%. Yeah. So we drive there and we get sourdough. Now, that never used to be a thing. I never but now it is, you know, my bread, if I eat bread, I don't eat a great deal of it. It has to be that. Yeah. You know, I can't have like the mass produced loaves. Yeah. I just don't like it, you know, whereas I like the sourdough bread, and thank you for bringing some sourdough today. But the point of it is that it's yes, you have your main shop, but it's those quirks, those different things, like olives done the right way. And it's just nice, because food should be exciting. It's not just
I think that's it. Fuel. I think, you know, when you look at how the world's evolved, or how society's evolved, shopping habits evolved over the last 10, 15 years, it used to be that one person would go out and do a big weekly shop or a big monthly shop, and you'd come back with 3 trolleys worth of food for the family, which is going to see through. Yeah. You know, I guess 20 years before that, where you'd shop locally in your little village shops, which all then shut down because the big ones opened. But I remember seeing some research probably about 9-10 years ago that said 80% of people don't know what they're having for dinner at 4:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean they don't have it in their cupboard. I think people are just quite a bit flexible around what's going to happen. Obviously, there's lots of everybody in the family's working. It's not one person working, one person at home. Yeah. But equally, lots of people are just popping to grab 1 or 2 bits on the way home from work, on the way home from school, on the way, like, in between other things that you're doing. And I guess, you know, what seems to have taken... what seems to have grown quite a lot is obviously the convenience stores for all supermarkets are now all over the place. But I think also it's enabled that kind of habit change, has enabled shops like ours to make our product offering different so that it suits those shopping habits. So,
yeah, agree.
You know, so we might have some bits of lasagna that you can buy to make for tea, but we've also got some salad that was grown down the road, and that salad is not going to taste like anything you buy in a packet. Correct.
And I think that for me is like, you know, that's the shift in terms of people almost going back to, I eat because it's a fuel, but I want to eat as an experience. Yeah. So the stuff you probably eat in the supermarket, you wouldn't then serve up an experience. Mm-hmm. You might go, you know what, I'm going to go get some nice stuff from a farm shop or whatever and do it that way. So for me, that's like, if I was to have a load of people round, I'd rather serve them up sourdough, for example, and go, oh, that's nice. And the only reason I didn't do it today is I just run out of time. Yeah. But the point of it is, we often, when we do that in the podcast, we do the pulled pork rolls, and then we serve it up with sourdough, which we got from the place the night before. And it's like, oh, where'd you get this from? You know, there's that conversation going on around food, because it can taste different and it can taste nice. So you talked about that you might have like bought a business or started a business. Mm-hmm. So how did you make that transition? Did you buy somewhere, or did you just get involved?
Yeah, ended up buying somewhere. So I'd been I decided that it was time to come back to the Southwest, which was the motherland. It was home. You know, still got some incredible friends with here that I've known since I was, you know, age 2. And family down this way. I guess I'd never thought I'd be able to come back because I'd become this expert, this leader within supermarket retail.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in the big cities across the UK or the capital cities across the world. So I'd sort of written off being able to come home. But I'd started to sort of, I guess, paint an area on the map of I would like to do something within here. I'd started to work out if I was going to start something from scratch, where might it be? And then also look at business for sale websites. And I don't know, these things sometimes feel like their destiny, definitely when you look back at them. I think probably like the second night that I'd been going on these business websites, up popped unnamed farm shop for sale in the southwest. So I clicked send message, sent over a message. 5 minutes later, got a response saying, "Hi Rob, you sound exactly the sort of person that I would love to sell this business to. Can we meet over the weekend? It'd be lovely to hear from you." So a little bit of backwards and forwards. I rang her up and said, "Oh, look, here's my background. She's like, well, I've taken it off the market now because I don't want to waste my time. You seem like a good person. You seem like the sort of person I'd like to buy it, that I'd like to take the business on." And I don't exactly know who the other person was, but that obviously didn't come to anything. And that was kind of history at that point.
That's amazing because what intrigues me about that is you had the foresight to go look to buy a business.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will start from scratch and beat their brains out and build it and but it's not often talked about, particularly even on this podcast. That people go, I know I wanted to do it, but find something existing that I could put my own stamp on it. It's actually a good way to start a business.
I think for me, I was confident that there was a market for what I wanted to create, which was food with ingredients that are traceable from suppliers with names, not with fictitious addresses. Things that you could trust. You know what you're eating. You know what you're putting in your body. Good provenance. It just felt like the supermarkets do not cater for that part of the market.
No.
They can't cater for it.
Well, it's mass produced, bottom line.
It's mass produced, and it's just not viable. Even things like sourdough. There's no bakeries, I don't think, in any supermarkets. They've been ripped out of everywhere, probably for all the right reasons in many ways.
It's a shame because I always remember coming in and you would smell it, wouldn't you? And it's not there now.
So I felt like I was confident that there was a viable business idea, and so I think for me, the benefits of buying an existing business, and as I've grown, I can tell you a bit more about it, but it's been through a combination of acquisition and new sites. Having somewhere that's trading means that you know where you're getting customers. I'm on a coffee Facebook group at the moment for coffee owners, coffee shop people.
All right, cool.
And you see lots of these people saying, "Oh, I'm looking at opening a new business. What footfall do you think I need?" And I just think, when you don't know if you're going to be taking £50 a day or £5,000 a day, that must be a pretty hard thing to take the risk on. And then you're probably going to be working in it sort of on the tools at the start. I think for me, what taking a trading business gave me, especially because it was a trading business that I felt had opportunity to, I guess, build a brand and then develop, was it gave me guaranteed customers. So there's been a shop on the side of the road in Brockley for like 100 years. People know it's there. It's in a great location by the side of a busy road. And it had customers coming through the door.
It's it, and that I just like that as an opportunity. So the people out there thinking of getting into business, but they think I've got to start from scratch. And what you're saying is, if you're going to go into this world, it's actually better to find out someone else who's done all the hard yards. And they may be a bit tired, or they've been doing it for many years, and find it that way. And see if you like it.
And I think for me, it depends on what sort of scale you want to build it to as well. I think my sites were never set on trying to create another Tesco. And I guess maybe my sort of vision on where I want it to go does change over time as well. But I think it was to have a few shops that mean that I don't have to be on the tools the time. That my role is about create a vision, find some amazing people, and then develop that strategy as a team, develop people, come up with ideas. And then on the flip side of it, gives me the opportunity to create some work-life balance of spending time with family, having family involved, with me feeling flexible to be able to do things with my diary and not a complete slave to life.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't have to just drop things when I'm in the middle of a social occasion and go and sort something out. If something's on fire, someone's not turned up, delivery's broken down, there's been I 100% feel like I'm in many ways on all the time. But for me, knowing that I was going to be taking on a business that already had turnover just took some of it wasn't even so much it took the risk away, but it created more of a guarantee that if the business in its current shape can attract this custom, these are the 5 things that I think I can do to it through some more additional investment.
No, I really
that means
like
we can grow it.
I really like that as a strategy. I think it's something not often talked about. Certainly when you're starting out, it's always like, no, you got to dream it all up yourself or whatever. But if you've got a client base, you can make those tweaks and grow it and put your own stamp on it ultimately, particularly in this space. So, what about from your perspective then? How long have you been doing it now? Because you obviously got Brockley stores, which is the first one, and then you took on the bakery and stuff like that. So how long have you been doing that collectively now?
It's been nearly 9 years.
And what do you think? What do you think as a leader, as a person, has changed most since you started?
I think there's probably 2 things for me. I think one of them is around when I first opened the doors with my name above the doors at Brockley. I had no children. I've now got a little girl, Amelia, and I think probably can't say it's a business that changed this, but I think she's just changed my view on how important life is to live and not just to be so absent because you're trying to pursue some financial goal that you miss life. So I think that's one thing which kind of changed overnight as soon as she was born. I'd bought this business. I was working 7 days a week, worried about having to pay somebody else to do one of those shifts because I wanted the money to pay for her. But actually it very soon became clear that what was important was being able to be around her.
Yeah.
And then I think the second, and this is a funny one because I feel like it has gone all over the place, is being really conscious of your appetite for risk and how much or how little you take.
Yeah.
I think when I first bought the business, I was quite I guess I must have had some. I'm happy to take risks. Like all my mates would be smiling if I said, "Oh, I don't take many risks." Definitely take risks. So put a big corporate career on the line to try and do something myself. Like, no, that is a risk, but I did it in quite a safe way. So I bought a business instead of starting something from scratch.
Yeah.
I then, instead of employing a manager, worked on the shop floor as a manager, making coffees, stocking shelves up, chatting to customers. I loved it. But it did take a little bit of time for me to suddenly go, oh God, Rob, you were never meant to just stay doing the same thing the whole time. Like, you were meant to go in there, get it all sorted. And to be honest, I got a manager at the time who was doing incredible, and I didn't need to be the manager.
Yeah.
But it just took that step to go, oh, I know, you need to take the risk, take a step out, do something different. But then I think on the flip side, I've then taken some way too big risks at times, mainly financially speaking, and just gone, the business is profitable, we're trading well, everything's on positive, I can invest some of my working capital in some form of growth, which I'll see next year. And then next year happens and you've got another idea, which is, if I just put whatever it is, another 60 grand into this, boom, and then you put some more working capital into it because your growth is funding your cash flow. Yeah. And then I think I got stung by COVID coming out of nowhere, as many people did, and just fundamentally changing the business. And then at the same time got stung by the energy price increase, by consumer confidence taking a dip. And I think, I just remember sobbing into my sheets before COVID was happening, thinking, And not even thinking about myself, thinking about all these people that I'm employing and how on earth am I going to pay them for the next year. This is before all the furlough, and we didn't have to go that in those lines in the end, but you just realise it's been some of the shocks that have made me realise.
And I don't think people see it. I don't think people see. So often, there's a lot of emphasis on the staff and the staff's well-being and stuff like that, but not many people ask too many questions as a leader.
Yeah.
Like we were talking with someone earlier today, and they were saying a similar thing. They got in, and they literally had basically had a really deep heart-to-heart conversation.
Yeah. And
walking through the door just crying, because it's like, it's not them they're worried about. It's all the people that are relying on them to get paid, And I think people don't talk about that stress enough, because ultimately it does come on their owners' shoulders.
Sure.
And they're not going to be like crying into the Zoom, or whatever it is, they're having to figure a way. They're having to make a plan. And I think, for me, it's been great being part of communities, a bit like Humans and the entrepreneurial world that we're all part of. Yeah. And that community has helped get us through, because we've all been through tough times, all of us, and yet we're somehow still around and we're still in business. But I think, as a leader, it's having the people around you where you can go, you know what, it's been rubbish the last few years or whatever. So I think anyone that's come through, the key thing of them coming through is having the right people around them, I think.
100%. And I think, I look at the last sort of 3 years, and coming out of COVID, our overheads got too high for what the business was going to end up doing when the COVID boom had sort of come and gone, and people were going back to normal life, back to the supermarkets. And so, I had to make some real tough decisions, and I had to let some really incredible people go, who had made masses of difference in the business, but ultimately it wasn't right for them to stay, not through any fault of their own, because the world had changed, the business had changed, and part of the job of a leader is to adjust to that. And I think one of the things I've learned through that is, there's definitely a thing about trusting your gut, but there's a really important thing about trusting the facts, trust the P&L. Trust your forecasts. And I think for me, what I feel like I'm learning is how to develop that healthy balance between the eternal optimist, which is probably what I would describe myself as, that thinks that anything I can achieve, I can make happen. Whatever I want, it can happen. And just put my mind to it. If you work hard enough, you can do whatever you want. And then actually the reality, which is, well, actually it doesn't always happen. And if it does happen, something else happens. And whether something else is as huge and world-changing as COVID, or whether it is as big as the war in Ukraine, and from a very small UK perspective, how that's impacted the price of energy, the price of flour, or whether it's as small as the change in a budget and the increase in national insurance costs, or a site opening down the road, or a set of roadworks getting put outside your business. There's things you can and can't have control over.
Exactly. And
I think for me, it's just about being confident to then very quickly make decisions, even though you've got a long-term goal. So it's just trying to get that balance right.
I think that as I've got slightly older and wiser, I'd say it's the thing that shifted for me was that it's to diversify even your client base. So now I'm working in the US, and I'm working in Hungary. And because obviously with the changes in government, regardless of whether you're left or right, ultimately it's going to be a bit more of an entrepreneurial push in there, because the guy in charge is now an entrepreneur and free enterprise, American dream, But that being said, there's more optimism in terms of investment. So working with companies out there, they're willing to invest because they can see that the market, whatever. So whereas sometimes in the UK, it's all doom and gloom, it's grey or whatever, I'm going, okay, well, that's fine. We still got a client base we service and we pick up clients. But we've got stuff happening in the US now that they're more positive. So naturally, we'll lean a little bit more over there if we have to. So and I think you're right. When you're an eternal optimist, it's like, well, we just power through, we just work whatever. But I think what I've learned is to take couple of steps back, pause a little bit, reflect a bit more. And I think that certainly in the past I was a bit more just work harder than anyone else and you'll win.
Yeah.
Now it's like, it's definitely, I'll go away, sharpen my axe first and then try and cut the tree.
I think for me, I definitely changed my sort of forward planning to go from how do I just do as much as possible to what are the sensible decisions. I mean, I can still put 100% in, but putting 100% in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, we had a farm shop in the countryside, so let's do something in the city.
Yeah.
We're doing lots of B2C, direct consumer stuff, or let's do some stuff with business. So we do lots of delivered catering to big offices, institutions across the Southwest. And I think the other thing for me is I felt like I've made mistakes in the past of like making decisions that I guess I love in my heart, which I think is really important, but I think it also has to be balanced with a bit more financial savviness than I've made decisions in the past. So I think for me, it was about then working through, well, what size of business is the size of, when I say business, I mean location. What size of location is a location that's going to make sense?
Yeah.
Because I feel like any location you open takes about equal of your brain time as whether it's big or whether it's small.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously everybody would be much more sensible to put that same amount of effort into something which is going to be bigger, because it means that it's more likely to be viable. It means that it's more likely to be able to afford an incredible manager to run it. And it means that someone could get their teeth into it instead of it being this irritating distraction.
Do you have any, like, obviously you've done really well in terms of like growing a portfolio, if you like, of businesses. Do you have any like large dreams of owning your own farm or something like as crazy as that, or is it just sustainably grow what you got? Or...
It's interesting. I feel like I have no expertise in farming. I have a real interest in it, and I think it is incredible watching what people do to make food, to grow food, to create food. I think for me, it's something that I'd like to be conscious of, aware of, to help bring other people closer to, so that people know where, you know, I can go to the farm where we buy our milk from and see Pete, and he will chat for hours about how much care he's put into selecting the perfect herd to create the most delicious milk. You know, I can go and see the veg growers and the amount of work that they're putting in. But I mean, this probably gives you a example of how good I would do if I was going to have a farm responsibility myself. I put a polytunnel in because I was like, right, we'll start growing some stuff in a field that we've got behind Brockley. I think we're maybe 2, possibly 3 years down the line, and maybe we'll have some stuff planted this year. So I think for me, being part of the system and being engaged in it is important, but I don't see any need to.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen, what I've seen is like someone like Jeremy Clarkson that's just elevated the whole farm world and real food and the hard work it takes and that. And then obviously with the inheritance tax with farmers and that. So it's been quite publicized, you know, in terms of that. And I think for me, we do take it for granted where we go to a supermarket and it's vacuum packed and we just buy it.
Yeah.
You know, years ago, we probably meat once a week. You could eat meat every single day if you want to. Yeah. And I look at that and I go, that's how much we take for granted. The process to get, you know, if you like, from field to fork. Yeah. It's a massive, it's a process that we just turn up and expect it. You know, like what you said about the farmer. No one even considers that. Yeah. He's thinking about doing what's best for the end user, you know, and it's good quality and this and the other, but it's like, no, I just grab it off the shelf and chuck it in my fridge. And so,
I mean, I think one of the things that I would be really interested in doing, and one of the things that we've started building up plans for, is how do we connect people, but our shoppers with where their food comes from, in a way that brings them to the farm.
Yeah. Nice.
So, but I don't see my job, I guess, as needing to own the farm or run the farm. My job can be facilitating incredible food that's made with ingredients from that farm and brings together people to talk about it in an interesting way, and just creates that knowledge of what's happening out there. But
I think in that in alone is a good thing to bring, because ultra processed foods, the stuff that's been chucked in, the ingredients been chucked in, we've maximized convenience at the detriment to our health.
100%.
And and we look at the UK's food market in terms of ingredients. Yes, in some cases it's bad, but it's not as bad as the US.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that's in the US food is just horrendous, and they're getting to the bottom of that. But I think just bringing people that awareness back to, you can have real food. And I say that if you have lettuce that's grown in a farm, or if you have fruit, it tastes so much better.
Yeah.
It tastes so much different. And I don't know, I was speaking to a lady, she's due to come on the podcast, but she made this statement and it shocked me. She said, do you know how long on average, how old on average an apple is in the supermarket? Yeah. And I was like, we were like 2 weeks, 4 weeks or whatever. She said 1 year.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? So it's picked a year ago. It's got so much stuff on it that's kept it alive, if you like. I mean, that's surely not good for you, right?
Yeah, I think, but the other part of that is that there's always been keepers and eaters in the apple world. So they wouldn't last for a year because they wouldn't have had refrigeration, but they definitely would have seen you through until the end of winter.
Yeah.
And there's that thing about, people wouldn't know that unless you live somewhere where you've got an orchard and you're picking apples, you're putting them in boxes, storing them in a barn in the olden days. Or in a fridge. And I think food and knowledge of food can do so much to people. I'm involved in a charity in Bristol called the Mazzy Project.
Yeah.
And I guess the way that we would describe our purpose is to use food. Mazzy means together in Greek. Founded by this incredible entrepreneur, Mal.
Yeah.
But using food as a vehicle to create confidence in young people who have lost that confidence for some reason, or who've never been given the opportunity to grow that confidence.
Yeah.
But so what you see is, one, you see that experience of being able to taste things that are super fresh, to try recipes that you might not have tried before.
Yeah.
But also to have the confidence to entertain people.
Yeah.
Even the confidence just to make your own meal, and just how those skills and that knowledge of food can have such a deep impact on people's lives. I think it has a deep impact on people's lives, but people don't know it because I don't know. Yeah, because
we all know when we've eaten something that we don't like, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, even if it's, some people sadly don't even get the experience of like a birthday cake or something like that. But so many people in this country would just be able to, the birthday cake when it comes in and everyone's singing happy birthday to me and I've got the candles. Like, even on a basic level, even if you think you're not into food, there'll be experiences or gatherings which will be, that's what I remember. And I think for me, the more people know about where their food comes from, the more interested they are into it. It can give, I guess, that sort of goodness from a nourishing your body, but also that real wholesome nourishing a community, because
that's great.
People share food. All those analogies through time, breaking bread, sharing bread. It's,
Well, they say that sharing food is, when you're building a relationship, having a meal together is like a much deeper sense of relationship. You have a phone call, you meet on a one-to-one, but like eating out, certainly in business, is another level of relationship. And I think for me, it's like we often don't realize that when you're eating someone and you're breaking bread, you're getting to know them. Food is the thing that's brought you together, but it's that exchange of life, if you like.
For sure.
And then for me, what's interesting, I thought I'd ask you this, is what's your go-to? So someone says, right, Rob, you're going to invite a load of people around your house. You must have like a go-to dish that you might rust. Like, what would it be? What would it be?
That's a funny one, because my daughter Amelia and my partner's children would both say, "Oh, Rob, you're so annoying because you always tell us that everything is your favorite food." Like, I'll cook a lasagna and I'll bring it up and go, "Oh, this is my favorite food." The next day it'll be a pizza. And it's like, "Oh, I love pizza. It's my favorite food." So maybe I'm just easily pleased, but I think probably the two things, because I would never be able to just choose one.
It's fine. Okay, it's good. Would
be pizza.
Okay.
But make the dough from scratch.
Yeah.
In a really hot pizza oven, and then work as a family, as a group of friends, to put your toppings on so that it's what you
Would it be
want.
Pineapple?
There'd be no pineapple. I mean, I'd have a bit of pineapple because it's probably my favourite.
Yeah, okay.
But I think I would... You know what? I'm a bit boring. I would go the classic... I don't like to admit this, but a classic margarita.
Okay.
Or a little bit of... pepperoni, and some jalapenos, and then dip it into a little garlic aioli and fresh salad on the side, bit of coleslaw. Simple. So that's delicious. So
that's one. What's the other one?
I think my second favourite is the classic Sunday roast.
Oh.
Again, I'm pretty boring considering that I eat so many different sorts of food, but I think for me, there's just something special about stopping for the week and doing something which is a bit grand.
Do you know what? My wife loves a roast, loves the Sunday roast, and I think that's obviously Claire's family, but in particular, they hung out around the dinner table and stuff. So I think there's something left over from that. We're a bit more like, we'll eat it, we'll get it down quick, and then we're off to the next thing. It's just, but I'm learning to enjoy like different foods and stuff like that. So for me,
I think the Sunday roast thing for me is definitely with a bunch of friends over as well. So I am the sort of person.
Which one though? When you say Sunday roast, chicken, beef?
I actually think that I would do a slow cooked pork or something like that.
Ah, okay.
Some nice mashed celeriacs at the moment. Purple sprouting broccoli is tasting delicious. Obviously roast potatoes. Yep. Yorkshire puddings, double quantities for all the kiddies.
Yeah.
But it would be a table surrounded by people. You know, I'm the sort of person that will have 18 people over, 20 people over for a big meal because
that's awesome.
I just like it.
Well,
and I'll
Rob,
happily slave over it.
How would people get in touch with you if they want to reach out, they want to talk to you, want to find out, some of the where some of your shops and that are? Is it easy to connect with you online? Or
connect with me online. You can email me, rob@brockleystores.co.uk, or just have a search and find me on LinkedIn. Would love to just share any ideas that you've got, listen to your experiences. If you think you need something that's delicious local food in your area, I think just trying to work out where that stuff is always amazing. Or tell me what your favourite recipe is.
Well, Rob, we're definitely going to need you to come further north of Bristol. Save me going to the garage up the road. So start having it on your way back. Just have a look around and see if there's any sites available. But thank you for taking the time out and spending some time on the podcast and just sharing your journey. It's been a privilege.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much, Darryl. Really lovely to be here.
Cool. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.